Have you ever noticed the loudest person in the room is usually the weakest? The one who talks the most, explains the most, defends the most is usually the one who is afraid, and the one who says nothing is the one you should be worried about, because silence is not empty, it is loaded. But here is the problem. Most people use silence the wrong way. They stay silent because they are scared. They stay silent because they feel small. They stay silent because they think they have no power. That is not power. That is suppression. Real silence is different. Real silence is chosen. And there is a huge difference between being quiet and being powerful. Let me tell you a story. There was a boy who grew up in a house where shouting was normal. Every argument was loud. Every disagreement was explosive. Every mistake came with humiliation. So he learned something very early. He learned to stay quiet. When they insulted him, he stayed quiet. When they compared him, he stayed quiet. When they doubted him, he stayed quiet. People thought he was weak. Even he thought he was weak. In school, when someone made fun of him, he didn't respond. When someone pushed him, he didn't push back. When someone tried to dominate him, he just looked down. Inside, though, inside something was building. Not anger, not revenge, pressure. Like a volcano that doesn't erupt, but stores heat. And here's what nobody understands about silence. Silence is storage. Every word you don't waste, every reaction you don't give, every argument you refuse to entertain, it becomes fuel. But only if you use it right. Most people don't. Most people stay silent outside, but scream inside. They replay conversations in their head. They imagine comebacks. They fantasize about revenge. They drown in overthinking. That kind of silence destroys you, because your body is quiet, but your mind is chaos. That's not a weapon. That's a prison. The boy didn't know this at first. He thought staying silent meant enduring pain. He thought strength meant tolerating disrespect. He thought silence meant swallowing everything. And slowly, he started losing himself, because silence without direction is just self-erasure. People began talking over him, ignoring him, using him. They thought he wouldn't react, and they were right. He didn't. But one night, something changed. He was sitting alone in his room after another day of being underestimated. He stared at the wall, and for the first time he asked himself a dangerous question. What if I'm not weak? What if I'm just storing power? That thought hit differently. What if every insult was fuel? What if every doubt was weight training? What if every moment of being ignored was actually preparation? Because think about it. When a lion hunts, it doesn't announce itself. It doesn't argue with the prey. It doesn't explain its intentions. It doesn't roar before every move. It stays silent, still, focused, watching. Silence is not absence. It is control. And that night, the boy decided something. He would still stay silent, but for a different reason. Not because he was scared, but because he was observing. He started listening more than speaking. He started analyzing instead of reacting. He started improving instead of defending. When someone mocked him, he didn't respond, but he remembered. Not to take revenge, to build. While others were talking, he was training. While others were gossiping, he was learning. While others were flexing, he was sharpening. And slowly, the energy shifted. People who once ignored him started noticing changes. His posture changed. His eye contact changed. His pace changed. He wasn't louder. He was heavier. You could feel it. There's something terrifying about a person who doesn't react, because you can't control them. If you insult someone and they explode, you win. If you insult someone and they defend themselves desperately, you win. But if you insult someone and they look at you calmly and say nothing, you lose control, because now you don't know what they're thinking. Silence creates mystery. Mystery creates power. But here's the deeper truth.
Silence is only powerful when your actions are loud. If you are silent and stagnant, people will forget you. But if you are silent and improving, people will fear you. The boy understood this, so he disappeared. Not from life, from noise. He stopped arguing online, stopped explaining himself, stopped trying to prove his worth in conversations. He started proving it in results. And that's when everything changed. 1 year later, the same people who mocked him started asking him for advice. The same voices that were loud went quiet. Because silence is contagious, but only when backed by growth. Now listen carefully. Silence is a weapon, but only when it is controlled. If you use silence to avoid confrontation because you're afraid, you become invisible. If you use silence to observe, calculate, and grow, you become unstoppable. Most people talk to feel important. Strong people stay silent because they know they are important. There's a difference, and the world can feel it. The real power of silence is this. It removes your opponent's leverage. They cannot manipulate what you do not reveal. They cannot attack what you do not expose. They cannot drain what you do not offer. Your emotions are currency. Your reactions are access. And silence cuts access. But here's where most people fail. They think silence alone is enough. It's not. Silence without discipline is weakness. Silence without action is invisibility. Silence without inner control is self-destruction. True silence is loud inside. It is clarity. It is strategy. It is patience. And patience is violence in slow motion. The boy didn't become loud. He became precise. He stopped wasting energy explaining himself and started investing energy expanding himself. And that's when people realized something terrifying. He was never weak. He was loading. And the most dangerous person in the room is not the one shouting. It's the one who is quiet and improving. Because when that person finally moves, it's already too late.
Because this is where most people quit listening. This is the uncomfortable part. This is where silence stops feeling powerful and starts feeling lonely. Because when you choose silence the right way, something strange happens. You lose people. Not because you did something wrong, but because you stopped reacting. And people are addicted to your reactions. When you used to argue back, they felt important. When you used to defend yourself, they felt powerful. When you used to explain yourself, they felt superior. Now, you just look at them, calm, unbothered, and that silence makes them uncomfortable. The boy began to notice it. At first, they laughed louder to get a response. He gave none. Then they poked harder. Still nothing. Then they tried kindness, fake kindness. He smiled politely and kept building. That's when the real war began. Not outside, inside. Because silence forces you to face yourself. When you stop arguing with the world, you start hearing your own thoughts clearly, and most people are terrified of that. Because inside their head is noise, doubt, insecurity, old insults replaying on repeat. Maybe they were right. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm just pretending to be strong. Silence magnifies whatever lives inside you. If you are weak inside, silence will expose it. If you are strong inside, silence will sharpen it. That's why most people use silence wrong. They go quiet externally, but internally they beg for validation. They stalk, they check, they hope someone notices their absence. That's not power, that's performance. Real silence does not wait to be noticed. It does not need applause. It is self-contained. The boy had to learn this the hard way. There were nights when he almost broke, when he wanted to send that long message, when he wanted to explain his side, when he wanted to defend his name. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, but then he asked himself one question. Will this make me stronger or just louder? And every time, the answer was clear. He deleted the message because he realized something brutal.
When you explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you, you are volunteering to be drained. Silence is not about avoiding conflict, it's about choosing worthy battles. And most battles are not worthy. While others were busy trying to win arguments, he was busy winning himself. He fixed his sleep, he trained his body, he disciplined his mind. He studied in silence, worked in silence, suffered in silence. Not to prove them wrong, but to prove himself right. And slowly, the gap started widening. The same people who laughed were still talking. He was transforming. The scary part about silent growth is that no one sees it coming, because there's no announcement, no warning, no dramatic speech, just results. And results don't argue, they dominate quietly. One day, someone who once disrespected him asked, "How did you change so much?" He looked at them for a moment and smiled. Because how do you explain years of silent discipline to someone addicted to noise? You can't. That's another secret of silence. Not everyone deserves the blueprint. Let them guess. Let them assume. Let them underestimate. Because underestimation is camouflage, and camouflage is power. But here's the twist most people don't expect. Silence is not just protection, it's a mirror. When you stop reacting, you see who was only around for entertainment. You see who needed your drama to feel alive. You see who only valued you when you were easy to control. Silence filters people, and filtering hurts. Friends drift away, conversations die, rooms feel colder. At first, it feels like loss, but it's actually clarity. Because the people who stay when you stop performing are the only ones who ever mattered. The boy's circle became smaller, but stronger. Fewer words, more respect. And something else changed. His presence. He didn't speak more, but when he did, people listened. That's what controlled silence does. It increases the weight of your words. If you talk all the time, your words become cheap. If you speak rarely, intentionally, your words become valuable. Scarcity creates value, even in speech. But let's go deeper. Silence trains emotional control, and emotional control is dominance. Imagine someone insults you. They expect anger, they expect reaction, they expect explosion. You give them calm eye contact, and nothing else. In that moment, who has control? Not the loud one, the quiet one. Because anger is surrender, reaction is surrender. Losing control of your emotions is handing someone else the steering wheel of your life. Silence takes the wheel back. But here's the part nobody talks about. Silence is heavy. It requires strength. It requires swallowing pride. It requires resisting ego. It's easy to clap back. It's easy to argue. It's easy to prove a point. It's hard to walk away. It's hard to stay composed. It's hard to let results speak later. That's why silence is a weapon most people misuse. They either use it as avoidance, or they abandon it when their ego gets hurt. The boy almost did too. There was a moment when everything inside him screamed to react. A public humiliation, a false accusation, people whispering behind his back. Old him would have exploded. New him paused. And in that pause, he realized something life-changing. If I react emotionally, I confirm their narrative. If I stay silent and improve, I rewrite it. So he chose the long game. And the long game is brutal, because it rewards patience, not impulse. Weeks turned into months, months turned into years, and then one day, the opportunity came. A stage, a platform, a chance. The same people who once overlooked him were now sitting in the audience, waiting, watching, curious. He walked onto that stage, calm, composed, not loud, not flashy, just grounded. And when he finally spoke, the room went silent. Not because he shouted, but because he didn't need to. Every word carried weight. Every pause carried tension. Every sentence carried proof. That's the final form of silence. It transforms into authority. Authority doesn't beg. Authority doesn't over-explain. Authority doesn't chase approval. It exists, and people feel it. But here's the truth that hits hardest. Silence is not about making others uncomfortable. It's about making yourself unshakable. If your silence is used to manipulate, it will fail. If your silence is used to punish, it will fail. If your silence is used to build, it will change your life. Most people want quick validation, but silent builders want permanent power. And permanent power is quiet. Now ask yourself something uncomfortable. Are you silent because you are afraid, or are you silent because you are preparing? Because those two look identical on the outside, but they are worlds apart on the inside, and only you know the difference. The boy knew, and that knowledge changed everything. But he was about to learn one final lesson about silence, a lesson that would flip everything upside down. Because sometimes the most powerful use of silence is knowing exactly when to break it. And most people never learn that.
There's a moment in every silent person's life when silence is no longer enough. And if you miss that moment, all your discipline turns into invisibility. Because here's the truth nobody tells you. Silence is a weapon. But a weapon is useless if you never draw it. For years, he mastered stillness. He mastered control. He mastered patience. He mastered the art of not reacting. But deep down, there was one final fear hiding inside him. What if I've become too quiet? What if I've confused strength with hiding? What if my silence is no longer power, but comfort? That question haunted him, because silence can evolve. At first, it protects you, then it strengthens you, then it isolates you. And if you're not careful, it can cage you. The world doesn't reward noise, but it also doesn't reward invisibility. And this is where most people use silence wrong. They stay quiet when they should speak. They shrink when they should step forward. They observe when they should act. They wait for perfect timing. But perfect timing is often just fear wearing patience as a disguise. The boy had built himself in the shadows. He had discipline, he had skill, he had confidence forged in isolation. But opportunity doesn't knock forever. One day, a door opened, a real one, a chance to step into the light, a chance to present his ideas, a chance to lead. And suddenly, his old habit whispered to him, "Stay quiet, don't risk it, don't expose yourself." Because speaking is vulnerability. When you speak, you can be judged. When you step forward, you can be attacked. When you show your power, you invite competition. Silence feels safe, but safe is not strong. He realized something brutal in that moment. Silence is only powerful when it is a choice. If you cannot speak, your silence is weakness. If you can speak but choose not to, your silence is power. And he had reached the test. Was he silent because he was disciplined, or silent because he was afraid? The room was waiting, eyes on him, heart steady, mind clear. He could walk away. No one would blame him. No one would force him. He could disappear back into the shadows where he had grown comfortable. But growth in the dark is preparation, not destination. He stood up, and in that simple movement, years of silent work crystallized. He walked forward, and for a brief second, the old version of him tried to return. The insecure boy, the overthinker, the one who used silence as armor because he felt small. But that version no longer fit. He had outgrown him. He reached the front, took a breath, and here's what changed everything. He did not speak loudly. He did not try to dominate the room. He did not try to prove anything. He simply spoke with certainty. Slow, measured, direct. And the silence in the room shifted. It was no longer his silence alone. It was everyone's. They leaned in, because when a person who rarely speaks finally talks, people listen. Not because of volume, but because of scarcity.
His words were simple, but they carried weight earned through years of restraint. He didn't overshare, he didn't over-explain, he didn't defend, he delivered. And something powerful happened. The same people who once underestimated him now felt uncertain around him. Not because he intimidated them, but because he no longer needed them. That is the highest form of silent power, independence. When you don't need approval, you speak differently. When you don't fear rejection, you stand differently. When you don't chase validation, you move differently. Silence had done its job. It had built him. But now speech became the weapon. Controlled speech, intentional speech, minimal but precise. That's the final lesson most people never learn. Silence is not the goal. Control is. If you cannot control your words, you are weak. If you cannot control your silence, you are also weak. Power is not in being quiet. Power is in choosing. Choosing when to react, choosing when to ignore, choosing when to step forward, choosing when to remain still. The strongest people in the world are not the loudest. They are not the quietest either. They are the most controlled, and control is invisible. After that day, something shifted permanently. He no longer used silence to disappear. He used it to create space. Space to think, space to observe, space to let others reveal themselves. And when it was time to act, he acted without hesitation. No drama, no announcement, no emotional explosion, just movement. Results multiplied. Respect followed. Not forced respect, natural respect. Because people can sense when someone is internally stable, and stability is rare in a noisy world. Look around. Everyone is shouting opinions. Everyone is reacting instantly. Everyone is broadcasting every emotion. Silence has become uncommon, and what is uncommon becomes powerful, but only when paired with courage. Here's the twist. The real weapon was never silence, it was restraint. Silence was just the training ground. Restraint was what gave him dominance. The ability to feel anger and not explode. The ability to feel fear and still step forward. The ability to feel doubt and still move. That is strength. And most people never reach it because they confuse two extremes. They think they must be either loud and aggressive or silent and passive. But there is a third option, calm and decisive. That's where real power lives. He began mentoring others later, and he noticed something interesting. The loud ones wanted attention. The overly quiet ones wanted safety. Very few wanted mastery, because mastery requires facing yourself. It requires asking, am I quiet because I'm strong or because I'm scared? Am I speaking because it's necessary or because my ego is hungry? Those questions hurt, but they reveal everything. Silence, when used wrong, shrinks you. Silence, when used right, sharpens you. And silence, when mastered, becomes optional. That's freedom. The freedom to speak without fear. The freedom to stay quiet without insecurity. The freedom to move without explaining. And once you reach that level, you stop trying to prove your power, because you know it. The boy who once sat in his room feeling invisible no longer needed to be seen, because he had built something internal. Unshakable calm, unshakable direction, unshakable control. And here's the final truth. Most people use silence to avoid pain. Winners use silence to build strength. Most people break silence to win arguments. Leaders break silence to change outcomes. So ask yourself one last time. The next time someone disrespects you, the next time someone underestimates you, the next time life tests your ego, will you react for temporary satisfaction, or will you respond from controlled power? Because the moment you master that choice, you become dangerous. Not loud dangerous, not emotional dangerous, precise dangerous. And the world does not fear noise, it fears precision. Silence is a weapon, but only in the hands of someone who has mastered themselves. And once you do, you won't need to announce it. They'll feel it.